Thank you everybody for coming along today. My name is, as Sadiq mentions, Graham Cairns, and I have been a journalist for, well, pretty much my entire working life. Call it 40 something years. It's disturbing me that it's been that long. I've just placed into the chat box a media release workshop handout. Now, you don't actually need this handout for the workshop, but hopefully some of the notes in there will be useful to you. Before we go too much further, I want to ask for some definitions. Who here would like to define news for me? Anyone? Show of hands. Nobody? All right, Maury, how would you define news? You'll need to unmute.
Something you haven't heard before, Graham.
Something you haven't heard before. That's actually remarkably true. Something you haven't heard before. Anybody else got a definition? In short, news is interesting stuff that happens and that you haven't heard before. I'm going to actually present you with some details. This is, what is news? Hopefully you can see the screen that I'm sharing. The question is often asked, what makes news? Well, if a dog bites a man, that's not news. If a man bites a dog, that's news because it is unusual, it is interesting, it is something that you haven't heard. News has to be relevant. It has to be something that your audience is interested in, but it can be remarkably specialized. If, for example, you have a Toastmasters club which is in the transportation industry, then transportation industry newsletters are going to love to hear stuff about what's happening in your club because it is of interest to that community. Very briefly, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about the inverted pyramid, but the inverted pyramid is basically, we do everything backwards in news. When you start writing something in an English prose, you start at the very beginning and then you work through until you get to the conclusion. Well, with news, you do the opposite. You come out with the conclusion first. The most important things come at the very front of the media release or the story. And then you put in the stuff that's less important. As I say, that's not really necessary, but I thought I'd give you some definitions. Also, many of you will have heard of the 5 W's and an H. That is who, what, where, when, why, and how. Those are the 6 things that should be included in every news story that you read and in every news release which you send out to try to get publicity. Tell the journalist that you're giving the information to. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. And they should be in the first 2 sentences. So, in summary, dog bites man, nobody cares. Man bites dog. That's news. News is stuff that is new and interesting and relevant to the audience. Always remember, newsrooms are understaffed, under-resourced, and under pressure. Make it easy for them. Give them the most important or newsworthy information. Then what's in it for the audience? Are there pictures and audio and videos? Can you supply copyright-free pictures and audio and video? Can you be contacted? Because if I'm a journalist and you send me a release and I can't reach you, I ring you and I get no answer, or you say, look, I can't talk to you now, can you call me back next week? Your story just gets placed into the circular filing system, also known as the rubbish bin. So those are things that you should look at in terms of news. Does that all make sense? I just wanted to give you that very basic background because that will impact on how you go about seeking publicity for your club or your business or your organization. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One which isn't quite real, but is close enough to a news release which I wrote and sent out and which got publicity. And then I'll tell you about one specifically relating to Toastmasters. So first, I'll take you to the media release that actually got quite a good return. Salisbury Lions Club members. Now, it's not really Salisbury Lions Club members. I know that it's not Salisbury Lions Club members because there is a member of Salisbury Lions Club here, I believe, or she might be McGregor Lions Club. But anyway, Salisbury Lions Club members have been praised by students of a tiny school in the Pacific Island nation of Vanuatu after donating school supplies to help them out in the wake of Cyclone Cedric. The Service Club's president, Alan Allenson, made the donations while on a pleasure cruise to the island nation last week. He and his fellow members were hailed as heroes by the children after they raised $2,000 to help the cyclone after the cyclone ripped through the region in March last year. They bought books and pens and pencils and other supplies, and they were given a wooden sword to take home, which then became an award which was given out for the best fundraiser. Now, as I say, that media release is not quite true, but it's close enough to one that I wrote. Why would that media release have got attention from the journalists? What's it got? First, it's got something unusual. A local service club goes to Vanuatu and donates things to a school. That never happens, does it? Well, actually, yes, it happens every single time a cruise ship goes from Australia to Vanuatu. People take along books and pens and pencils and things that the locals simply can't afford. So that happens all the time, but it's not newsworthy unless you know that it's happening. And there's the next thing that you need to bear in mind for your club. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did the tree really fall? If you do something newsworthy as a club and nobody hears about it, did it really happen? Well, yes, it happened, but nobody heard about it. It's part of your job to let them know. Now, whose job is it to come up with media releases to send out to the media from a Toastmasters club, for example? Is it the role of the president?
VPPR?
VPPR?
Secretary?
Basically, it's the role of anybody who can come up with a good news story. Now, obviously, it should be funneled, in the case of a Toastmasters club, probably be funneled through the VPPR with it being checked over by the president. If you're running a training business, you may not have those people, so it's up to you. But in all cases, think outside the box. Think what could work for my business, for my organization, for my idea. How can I get publicity? Let me give you an example of a Toastmasters club that gained an enormous amount of publicity out of something that happens in every Toastmasters club every year. Jimboomba is a small Toastmasters club in District 69, my home district. It's a little country town. It's a club that's been around forever. It's always been a small club, but it's always punched above its weight, if you like. A couple of years ago, a guy called Pat Burns, who you might guess from the name is Irish. Patrick gave a speech, which was a rib tickler speech. It was actually genuinely hilarious. It was about him leaving his daughter behind at the shops and having to bribe her with a mobile phone so that she didn't tell her mother that he had left her behind at the shops and driven half an hour away before he realized that she wasn't in the back of the car. Well, he won at club, and he won at area, and he won at division, and then he won at district because it was a really good speech. I wrote a media release about Pat winning that contest that went something along the lines of, an Irish immigrant who's made Jimboomba his home has been named as the funniest speaker in 2 states and 2 countries. Patrick Burns, who is a member of the Jimboomba Toastmasters Club, has won the District 69 Humorous Speech Contest, pitting him against the best humorous speakers from all of Queensland, Northern New South Wales, the Northern Territory, and Papua New Guinea. His hilarious speech about, and then I put a bit of details on the speech, was crowned the funniest of all of those contestants, meaning that he had beaten out, and I worked out how many Toastmasters were in all the clubs that would have led up to there. That story, nothing terribly unusual for Toastmasters, got a run in the Jimboomba local newspaper, the Southern Star, which is a local newspaper that covers that area-ish, the local radio stations, there are 2 of them, but they're owned by the same people, plus another radio station that likes to pretend that it broadcasts into that area. And it even got a little bit of coverage in the main state newspaper as well. Why? Because it had the things that we're talking about. It had something that was unusual. It had man bites dog. It had the fact that a local was going up against the best of the state, and in fact the best from interstate and from overseas as well. You see, that's the sort of thing that will get you publicity. Think outside the box. Took me about half an hour to write that release. Got a lot of publicity. Didn't actually get Jim Boomba any new members, but it did get them a number of guests through the door. And that's the first task that you have as a Toastmasters club, to get people in the door. It's then up to somebody else to work on conversion, but that's a different matter, and that's not what we're talking about here today. So I'm going to now ask you, my audience, to come up with something that we can turn into a media release. But I need to find somebody who can be a scribe for me. Anyone who's able to type fairly quickly, who wants to volunteer? He says, looking wistfully around the room. Is that a smile I see from you, Michelle?
Michelle.
I was smiling because if I find what you're saying really interesting, I will stop typing. Just warning. So if somebody,
all right. Does anyone just want to? Yeah, I just want somebody to take down some notes for us, which we can then turn into. Yep. So you can just take down some notes. All right. Who here wants to volunteer their club as a club that we can write a media release for? Come on, there's got to be at least a dozen clubs here. Brian, okay.
Royal Roads Toastmasters is going to have a Nobel Peace Prize winner giving a presentation next week.
There is something that lends itself easily to getting media publicity. What's the Nobel Peace Prize? What do they win the Peace Prize for? Who are they, in brief?
He won the Peace Prize because he was in the United Nations Peacekeepers when they won the Nobel Prize in, I think it was 2008.
Excellent, excellent. How long has Royal Roads been a club?
8 years.
Is Royal Roads meeting face to face, or are you meeting only online at the moment?
We were a hybrid club, have been for many years, and now of course we're 100% online at the moment.
All right. And Royal Roads is in Victoria and
and we used to meet in what's called Hatley Castle, and we had a room in the castle, and there's a lot of history behind that castle too.
Yep. So where is it based though? Just give me a location.
Oh, we're in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada.
Excellent. All right. So who wants to suggest what might be the opening paragraph to a media release that you would write about that? Anyone? All right, I'll give you a freebie on this one. I'll start it. A Vancouver Toastmasters club will feature a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize at a lecture this Thursday that is attracting attention from around the world. All right, so you put the most important stuff. It's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. You put the who, you put the what, they're going to be speaking to this club. You put the when, this Thursday night. You put the where, it's online, and there will be people coming from everywhere. So you've got the who, the what, the where, the when in the first sentence. Now you need the how and the why. So you would go, the club, which has members both online and which has traditionally had members both online and in person, is going to be presenting the speech, or is going to be showcasing the presentation via Zoom. All right, so then you've got the how and you've got the why. So in our chat, we've got, a Vancouver Toastmasters Club will feature a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize this Thursday night, attracting people from around the world. The club, which has members both online and in person, is going to be showcasing the presentation via Zoom. All right, so now you start to go into the nitty gritty, who they are, who the speaker is going to be, what they're going to be talking about, why they are coming to Royal Roads Toastmasters Club. And that's when you start to get quotes from the president of Royal Roads Toastmasters Club. The president of Royal Roads Toastmasters Club, Fred Nurk, says, communication is such an important skill, particularly in these times of difficulty due to COVID. So we thought it was important that we allow a recognized expert in peacekeeping come and talk not only to our members, but to our guests from around the world. So you then start to provide some background. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can you see how this can apply to your club? Can you see how this can apply to your business? If you're running...
The guest has a name, whether that makes any difference. It's Major John Kemat from the Canadian Air Force.
All right. We're not going to write the release for you today, Brian. That's actually going to be your job. That'll be an exercise for the student after today's session. But we will run through how it's done because we really want you to learn the process here. Another club, another volunteer club, or a business. Yes, Maury.
Hi, Graham. Thanks very much. I'm sorry if I've got an echo going on. I think I've got two signs. We had a member who had a heart attack on stage.
Yes.
Took 2 years to recover and now has returned to Toastmaster meetings. He's 84 and he's an inspirational example of people carrying on.
Excellent. All right. A man who collapsed, a man who nearly died after competing in a speech contest in Ipswich 2 years ago has returned to the stage saying he's not going to let it beat him. That's the sort of thing that you would look at doing, because
in fact, Graham, he did die.
All right, you could probably maybe you could work that in. A man who succumbed to a heart attack immediately after competing in a public speaking contest says he won't let his won't let it stop him. I can't remember his name, Bill Bloggs. We'll call him Bill Bloggs just for the purpose of the exercise. Bill Bloggs was taking part in an impromptu speaking contest at the Ipswich Community Centre when he succumbed to the heart attack and actually died on the floor, but was resuscitated by fellow Toastmasters who leapt to his treatment. Then go back to Bill and talk about why he has come back. Yeah, you might then later in the release talk about the actual incident and then maybe even throw in, when Bill recovered after surgery and saw that he was surrounded by family as well as Toastmasters, his first question was, did I win? Which is actually a true story, I am told. But yeah, so there's a great story. The fact that he is back and not stepping aside, not letting this get in his way, is a really good story. And I'm quite sure that the Queensland Times, which is the Ipswich newspaper, River 949, which is the local radio station, that there are a variety of media organisations that would love that story if you write it. And give me a call later and I'll help you write that one because I love that story. Let's take a look specifically about trainers, because this is a training club and I've been asked if I can at least talk about trainers here. Who here has a training course, a training module, a training business that they'd like to see if we can work out a media release for you? Anyone? How about we talk, Jim, about training for community organizations. Could you think of a way that you could make the need for training, not just in Toastmasters, but in all community organizations? Can you think of how you might write a release that would promote the concept of training and specifically, and of specific sorts of training?
You could say something like, local community hero tirelessly saves 100 people in the local flood, all thanks to the dedicated training he had through the SES many years ago.
Yep. All right. So it's 10 years since Queensland's disastrous floods. It's 20 years since Jim Faisal was first trained in saving people. But there are people alive today who would not be here without that training. And then you go into, so, you know, you hook it into something that is newsworthy. In this particular case, it would be the fact that it is 10 years since the floods that tore through southeast Queensland. Yeah, let's see what we can come up with out of, say, Mexico. Julian.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about some form of training that you have been involved in recently, not Toastmasters, for example, but something else that you've been involved in. What have you been doing? Because I know you are a trainer, amongst other things.
Okay, for our community, I belong to one entrepreneur community, and we build several webinars for 3 months, and I deliver one of that chapter about time management.
Excellent. All right. Since the advent of COVID and meetings online, more and more people are finding they actually have less and less time. Because we are presenting on screen all day, it's really easy to let work slip into our personal time. Time management has become crucial, and that's why Julian Merlot has been presenting webinars on how to manage your time. And that, see what I'm doing there? Again, you hook it into something that is newsworthy, and then you massage that to get your point across. The point that I'm making is that we don't think of things as being newsworthy because they happen to us all the time. Michelle, you run training consultancies. They're just your bread and butter. But what difference does one of your training sessions make to a participant who comes along? What would they learn, for example, in a training module that you are presenting?
Let's say, for example, if it's a workshop on crucial conversations, instead of just mentioning the title, we could start by saying, have you ever been in a high-stakes situation where emotions are high and ideas differ? That's why we need crucial conversations. Michelle Albalim of WLF Center, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay. You see where I'm going with this. You look for what is different, what is newsworthy. Crucial conversations is, you know, and it's one of those phrases that, yeah, well, I know exactly what you mean when you say I'm running a workshop on crucial conversations. But if you were to actually put it in words, diffusing situations before they get out of hand is the focus of a series of webinars that are being organized by a, whereabouts do you live these days? Wherever it is, Ashland, actually I can't remember what, Sutherland. Diffusing critical situations, diffusing situations before they become critical is the series of the subject of workshops being offered by a Sutherland trainer to members of the community next month. Crucial Conversations is the title of the series, which is about, and define what it's about. Michelle Alba Lim from, and then so you look for something newsworthy up front. The point that I'm making is that you can do this with a business, as we've just shown with Michelle, with a community organization, which we've shown with Toastmasters, with anything at all, so long as you start to think outside the box. We've got 5 minutes left. This is your last opportunity. If you have a Toastmasters club that you'd like us to help you draft a media release, stick your hand up now. Okay, Tanya, saw your hand.
Oh, I have not got the medium, so you haven't told us how to get that.
In the sense of?
Well, we don't have newspapers anymore. They've cut them out.
No, the Courier Mail still exists. The Southern Star still exists. In your particular case, the Courier Mail, the Southern Star, they are both still there. The Country Caller is a statewide newspaper that's still there.
Southern Star's not at my place.
Sorry?
Southern Star's not at my place.
May not be delivered to your place, but it still exists. The point that I make is that, yes, it's very easy for us to say newspapers are dying. How are we going to get publicity in newspapers? Well, they're still there. They'll still run your stuff. You may not ever see them, but that doesn't matter because you're not appealing to you. You're appealing to other people. The other thing is, of course, don't forget that there are other mediums available. Newspapers, radio, and television, the mass media, are called mass media because they will get you your largest audience. But they're not the only ones. There are blogs, there are podcasts, there are vodcasts, there are community groups, there are, hey, community notice boards in your local shopping centre. If you write a media release, send it to your local newspaper, send it to your local radio station,
so if I've got to go and buy it
to your local television station, but pin it up on the notice board at your local shop. Contact
so do I have to bite a dog?
Sorry?
Do I have to go and bite a dog?
You have to look around and think what is unusual about what is happening. For example, Mount Gravatt Toastmasters Club, I know you're the area director for, Mount Gravatt Toastmasters Club this week held an open house. Now, I know that that had been promoted quite heavily on social media. That's where I saw it. I didn't actually see it in my local newspaper. Well, I don't actually get a copy of the local newspaper, but I don't know if it was in there. But I do know that Brisbane Speakers, which is another club not far away from yours, had an open house, and we got an article in the local paper which got 12 or so people along, of whom about half joined, which is pretty good out of a single newspaper article. So yes, it's difficult with the drying up of mainstream media, of mass media, but the mass media is still out there and it's still possible. You've just got to be willing to think, who can I tell about this? What is interesting about my Toastmasters Club? What am I doing that is different? What is the dog and what is the man here? And how do I make it interesting enough for a journalist to go, yeah, I like that story. I'm going to give him a call and turn this into a yarn. That is how you get publicity for your Toastmasters Club. Now, obviously, since I write media releases for a living, amongst other things, it's not quite as easy as I'm making it out. I would spend a lot of time polishing one. But the point that I'm making is that the skills that we've talked about here are skills which you and everybody can utilize. Just think about the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how. Put the most important stuff at the front. Think about why is this unusual, or how can we make this seem unusual? Who should I send it to? Make sure that your phone and your email are available and that you are available on the phone and on the email. And if you're the sort of person who's too busy to be able to take the journalist calls, delegate to somebody else who can take it and speak on your club's behalf, and you will get publicity. You will get media coverage. Now, that may not turn into members, because once you get them in the door, you then have to convert the guests to members. But if you don't get the guests in the door or online in the first place, you cannot possibly convert them. And so you might as well just go home and think, it was all too hard, we're not going to bother. Mr. Toastmaster.